A year had elapsed since humanity's devastating defeat in the war against the demon kin. The majority of mankind had been claimed by the malevolent creatures, their minds twisted and used as vessels for the demon's unholy progeny. Only a single human survivor remained, standing solitary in a shattered world. This survivor was Zephyr, the last remnant of the once mighty resistance that had valiantly opposed the demon lord Tartarus, the monarch of demons. The epic battle had exacted a heavy toll on Zephyr, leaving him impaled by Tartarus's merciless blade, resigned to his impending demise. But Tartarus had not finished with him. He invoked a spell to suspend time and initiated an unexpected conversation. Tartarus couldn't help but admire Zephyr's unwavering resolve, commending him as the first human in a long while to dare challenge the monarch. He expressed his contempt for those who surrendered when confronted with insurmountable might, branding them as feeble. Tartarus extended an offer to Zephyr, proposing an alliance that would transcend the limitations of humanity, allowing them to conquer not only this world, but other realms as well. However, Zephyr's battered body bore the scars of their fierce battle, beyond any hope of recovery. Suspicion gnawed at him, doubting Tartarus's true motives, and suspecting that this was merely another ploy to force him into submission. Zephyr's thoughts drifted to a beloved individual, someone who had always criticized his character, and had even placed an enigmatic spell upon him. If he were to make physical contact with Tartarus, his body would detonate with a power that exceeded the boundaries of their world. In a final act of defiance, Zephyr reached out and touched Tartarus, defiantly flipping him the middle finger, triggering the explosive release of energy. The blast engulfed the plateau, leaving only Tartarus's hands incinerated and his rage burning fiercer than ever. All that remained of Zephyr was his charred form, upon which the demon lord vented his frustration with a furious punch. Zephyr's battle had reached its conclusion. He could not avenge his loved one or rescue humanity as they had hoped. It appeared to be a futile demise, yet, to his bewilderment, Zephyr awoke in his restored body, with his memories intact and his armor unscathed. Confusion washed over him as he surveyed his surroundings, discovering statues of gods within a temple-like chamber. Initially believing he had reached the afterlife in the underworld, a voice spoke, dispelling his misconception. A high-ranking angel named Mercedes materialized before him, revealing that he had perished and would have typically been consigned to the underworld. However, the three supreme deities had intervened, electing to send Zephyr back in time, offering him an opportunity to alter the course of history. She elucidated that Zephyr would retain his memories, but lose his abilities, honed physique, magical prowess, and acquired skills. As he contemplated this surreal turn of events, the notion that it might all be a dream crossed his mind. Suspecting that Tartarus had subjected him to a hallucinatory power, he believes further that amidst the chaos of the demon's assault, as death surrounded him and he fervently sought divine intervention, the gods had severed all ties with their world. They turned a deaf ear to his prayers, rejecting both supplication and sacrifice. Moreover, they stripped the clergy of their ability to harness the gods' power, leaving them powerless to mend wounds, ultimately leading to the swift downfall of human forces. Once they had calculated there was nothing left to gain, they abandoned their realm. There was no conceivable reason why these calculating deities would offer him such a chance for free. In actuality, the angel is privy to Zephyr's thoughts, and what the gods truly desire is something more entertaining to witness. Zephyr seethes with rage, launching a formidable mana punch, menacing the angel, with no intention of entertaining the angel's explanation. To the gods, Zephyr and all those he cherished were mere pawns, their lives spent for the gods' amusement. As his anger intensifies, the angel invokes the gods' might, summoning a colossal leg that descends upon Zephyr with crushing force. Subsequently, the angel elucidates that self-worth is the currency by which one can attain their desires, a principle applicable to humans and other species alike. Nothing in this world comes without a cost. The angel further reveals that one god fervently desires his return for a different motive. It transpires that Tartarus harbors resentment towards the angels and yearns for another confrontation, unwilling to accept defeat at the hands of a mere human. The angel then poses the question once more. Will Zephyr accept the offer? It becomes evident that if Tartarus genuinely seeks death, Zephyr will be the one to grant that wish. The angel commences the spell, and despite its origin with the detested gods, Zephyr recognizes an opportunity when it presents itself. He vows to seize this chance to exact vengeance upon the demon god Tartarus and all the gods who regarded him with disdain, like insignificant insects. The next moment he awakens to the sound of someone addressing him as a rookie, feeling water pouring over his head. A familiar face triggers a memory, someone he had seen years ago during his time as a temple slave. A decade before his fateful battles with the demon god, he discreetly searches for a secluded spot and accesses the perks of being sent back in time. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is the coolest type of dragon? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Overwhelmed, he experiences a headache as an influx of information floods his mind, including top-tier skills, valuable items, and even abilities now manifested as practical skills. Zephyr's heart swelled with happiness as he contemplated the incredible generosity they were witnessing. It seemed almost surreal to him. However, his reverie was abruptly interrupted when the slave supervisor noticed his moment of distraction. The supervisor approached him, anger simmering in his eyes, and a cruel whip in hand, poised to strike. But in this second life of his, Zephyr's reflexes were astonishing. Swiftly, he caught the whip mid-air with a grace that surprised even himself. Instead of escalating the situation, he maintained his composure and offered a sincere apology before obediently returning to his laborious work. Zephyr couldn't help but wonder why he had been able to catch the whip so effortlessly. He surmised that it was a result of his extensive battle experience, honed through countless conflicts until the fateful battle with the demon god. It was during that encounter that he had acquired the skill known as the Wall of Iron, a skill that not only drastically boosted his defensive capabilities, but also allowed him to disregard any damage that fell below his enhanced defense level. Not a scratch remained on his hand. Furthermore, his newfound passive skill prevented him from tiring easily, enabling him to toil away in the mines tirelessly, day after day. As the day's labor concluded, the excitement in the air was tangible. Today marked the unveiling of the team rankings, and Zephyr's group eagerly anticipated the results. The announcement finally came, and to their elation, Zephyr's team had secured the top position. They were now recognized as the most skilled miners in their lot. However, there was a caveat to their triumph. Those at the bottom of the rankings were obliged to share their resources with those higher up the ladder, a customary practice in their harsh world. Conversations among the miners often revolved around the Temple of Aria, a significant institution in their society. It served both as a religious entity and a lending establishment, catering to individuals who had once been adventurers or had lost their homes to menacing monsters. Now they were laboring to repay their debts. Zephyr, though, couldn't afford to be reckless. The weight of a mysterious stigma hung over him, making it perilous to wander too far. Straying too much from the designated area would result in his instant demise. His plan was simple: work diligently, settle his debts, and ultimately attain his freedom. But there was someone who persistently occupied his thoughts. Altair, his former lover. He had made a solemn promise to protect her this time. Zephyr headed to a nearby stall, investing every coin he possessed, and even resorting to taking a loan to purchase recovery potions. These potent elixirs not only restored a portion of his health, but also possessed a hidden benefit, enhancing his magical abilities when consumed in abundance. Zephyr possessed a unique attribute known as the Vision of Hermes, which amplified the effectiveness of all his potions, making them 5 times more potent. Consequently, day by day, he continued to mine, consume potions, and engage in rigorous training. One fateful day, he overheard the cry of a menacing monster and promptly reported it. Zephyr volunteered to lead a group of hunters to confront the creature. These hunters were an elite group, meticulously chosen for their combat prowess. They earned substantial rewards for facing the perilous monsters that emerged from magical rifts, despite the dangers they posed. Back at the stall, Zephyr craved more elixirs, but the vendor declined. His standing wasn't high enough, and he had reached his borrowing limit. Then, a priestess appeared, offering gold in exchange for Zephyr's bodily organs. He consented, all in pursuit of enhancing his prowess. The stall owner rewarded him with a generous stash of elixirs, which Zephyr consumed eagerly. As he wrapped up, the team of hunters arrived, under the leadership of Goat. They made their introductions, and Zephyr revealed his unique ability, the knack for detecting mana. This skill proved invaluable in navigating dimly lit dungeons without alerting lurking monsters, an indispensable asset for their perilous vocation. As they prepared to venture into the mine, Zephyr had a specific role to fulfill, that of a porter. A month elapsed, and they successfully conquered the dungeon within the mine. However, an unsettling realization crept over Zephyr. Among the team members, he recognized a face from the past, and a sense of foreboding enveloped him. He contemplated that perhaps this time, 2 of them might not survive the ordeal. Zephyr began to scheme, pondering how he could turn this situation to his advantage. At the entrance of the dungeon, another team stood ready, the reconnaissance hunters. Their leader distributed enchanted bracelets, explaining that these magical trinkets would transmit a distress signal if the hunting team encountered trouble within. It served as a contingency plan. Yet Zephyr was aligned with the reconnaissance team, and he harbored the hope that such a fallback wouldn't be necessary. Inside the dungeon, they crossed paths with wolf-like creatures. The hunters utilized stones to divert the beast's attention, then moved in for the decisive blow. Their objective centered on gathering intelligence about the dungeon and its inhabitants. Typically, this information would be employed to assemble a formidable strike team with the firepower needed to purge the dungeon. Nevertheless, when the reconnaissance team boasted skilled combatants, they sometimes took matters into their own hands. Gaut, a member of the group, persuaded the others to do just that. He summoned Zephyr and requested him to utilize the supplies he had brought along: hazelnut leaves and seeds that emitted the scent of female kobolds. This ploy would lure the kobolds into a trap designed for their annihilation. Zephyr found himself lost in memories of his previous life, a time when he toiled alongside Gaut. Back then, Gaut had never received the recognition he yearned for, but now, as they readied to conquer the dungeon together, Zephyr had a crucial piece of advice to share: the strategic use of traps. He confidently asserted that he had previously explored the dungeon in solitude, encountering only diminutive kobolds. Why squander this golden opportunity? Together, they could seize all the glory for clearing the dungeon. Brimming with determination, they delved deeper into the ominous depths. Gale, one of their comrades, stumbled upon a peculiar structure resembling a nest. Suddenly, an enormous claw shot out, ensnaring him before anyone could react. It flung him away, leaving the others in stunned silence. Marco readied himself for the impending battle and instructed the team to remain behind him. Fear clenched at his heart, for he knew not what horrors lay within the nest. Little did he realize that the creature lurking within far surpassed his capacity to handle. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, the scout who had bestowed the group with the mysterious bracelets was jolted. 3 of the bracelets had shattered simultaneously. Gaut stood his ground with unwavering courage, his shoulder bleeding profusely, while Zephyr aided in fending off the monstrous tail with his will of iron, passive skill. However, when the tail released its captive, an even more formidable adversary emerged from the shadows. This creature employed pheromones to deceive other monsters into perceiving it as one of their own kind, ultimately devouring the very creature that had raised it, all in pursuit of chaos and destruction. Zephyr was aflame with determination as he seized Gaut's spear, preparing to face this predator. His 3rd divine perk granted him a silver key in his left hand, a portal to a concealed chamber within a forgotten castle, housing a cache of essential items, a secret storage place. With the key, he retrieved a dragon soul plant, known for its calming properties when consumed, and a cloth to secure the spear firmly to his grasp. Gaut, the miner, initially believed he stood no chance against this formidable foe. However, the predator let out an ear-piercing scream, employing a skill that struck fear deep into Gaut's core. Memories flooded his mind of stories told by his elders, tales of an adult predator attacking a nearby village a few years ago, paralyzing the villagers with overwhelming dread, leaving them helpless and awaiting their grim fates. But what Gaut sees now is different. Zephyr is fighting the predator with a spear in hand. Thanks to the dragon soul plant, he isn't affected by fear. He knows he can't beat the predator with just strength, so he takes out a green substance, a poison, to use. It's the 70-second venom of Venom King Fade, a poison Zephyr got from his friend who studied poisons. He coats the spear with the venom and stabs the predator, making it scream in pain. The venom starts to work, causing excruciating pain and spoiling the predator's organs. Zephyr estimates it will take about 3 minutes for the venom to fill the predator's body. He needs to stay alive until then, but he forgets that the predator can use its tail, and it throws him against the cave wall. The predator approaches with an open jaw, ready to shred Zephyr, but Zephyr has another plan. He throws another vial of venom into its mouth and dodges its attack. He lands multiple hits, making the predator vomit blood. Zephyr sees that he has about a minute left until the poison spreads. The predator swings its tail again, but this time Zephyr grabs onto it and propels himself onto the predator's back. He stabs the predator's head with the spear, causing it to cry out in pain. It tries to attack with its claws, but it only breaks the spear instead of hitting Zephyr. Undeterred, Zephyr takes the broken pole and stabs the predator's head again. The predator goes wild, trying to get Zephyr off. All Zephyr needs to do now is deliver the final blow. He uses the momentum from the swing, jumps in the air, and with his hand enveloped in magic power, he punches the spear through the predator's head. Gaut, who watched it all, can't believe what he just saw. He thinks that with strength like that, Zephyr could easily join the hunter team, but he misunderstands that even without winning over Zephyr's good side, Zephyr's worth would have been recognized anyway. But right now, Zephyr is nothing but a miner, and Zephyr needs a ticket in the form of Gaut. Somewhere else, there's a group of people ganging up on a last living person, from a kind of group of people. He cries that he is not the demon god worshipper, but Sahak, a man with a robe, calls out to his teammates to crush him anyway. From that crushed person's corpse, there's a centipede coming out, marking him to be the demon god worshipper, which Sahak immediately destroys the centipede. The next thing he does is report the matter to his leader, called Matthias, as he is mad that in order to find one demon god worshipper, Sahak needs to slaughter 7 members of the temple. It turns out that they have a plan to do a raid in a month, and Sahak promises Matthias that he will rule out the heretics from the temple as much as possible and deliver a better result in the raid. Arriving at the Department of Human Resource, Goat nominates Zephyr to be a hunter in his team. The priest then processes the nominee. It turns out that in the cave, Zephyr asks Goat to talk. He wants Goat to not report the appearance of the predator. While Goat is worried he might be found out, Zephyr takes the predator's corpse into the silver room. It is then explained that the dungeon, such as the monster's corpse, magic stone, items, will be taken by the temple. The only things that slaves are able to obtain are bonuses based on the clearing reward and the value of the loot. Zephyr then offers Goat a promotion. He will help Goat to advance through 3 more dungeons, and Zephyr will get all of the monster's corpses. While waiting for the ID tag for transferring to become a hunter, Zephyr thinks about the great raid with the Temple Knights that's scheduled to happen within the next month. That's where they will discover the item that will cause a huge wave over the entire continent, and Zephyr determines to get his hand on it. He needs to be on the raid party to change the future. When the procedure is completed, Zephyr has been told to collect all the essential equipment from the supply depot, so he walks there with Goat, while thinking that he enlisted to the hunter team after the raid participant list was announced, and the number of the raid party is about 20. In order to join, he needs outstanding achievements or connections in order to get into that party. As Goat explains about the depot, the team which hunts the demon god worshipper passes by them, so Goat grabs Zephyr's head, telling him to bow down. Goat explains that they are the team of heresy examiners, the direct slaves of the examiner, and the leader of the party is Sahak, who is also called the Mad Dog. That's when Sahak suddenly calls them out, pointing his hand at Zephyr. He introduces himself, and when Goat tries to cover for Zephyr, Sahak releases his killing intent and makes Goat back off. But it doesn't affect Zephyr, though. It makes Sahak certain that there's no one else that would notice, and since Sahak was blessed to have extremely heightened sense, he knows that Zephyr is a high-level expert. It turns out that all new slaves are performance tested prior to being assigned a department. A test in strength and magic, they always give one the opportunity to battle for the hunting team, since they're always in need of new recruits. But such a high-level expert was in the mining team and was nominated to be transferred to the hunting team is simply unnatural, and all of Sahak's members swiftly circle around Zephyr. Sahak then holds him off, intending to ask a few questions. He asks whether Zephyr ever heard about a demon god worshipper, which it turns out only a handful of people know about its existence, and no one knows them better than Zephyr, the demon god worshipper, believers that worship the demon god Tartarus. These beings were a real threat to humanity in the upcoming battle. They were about to betray everyone. Sahak said he worked for Lord Matthias and believed that Zephyr was dangerous. Zephyr, in simple words, challenged them, saying they couldn't hold on to their honor because something bad would happen to them. Sahak then used a spell called Red Field that made him stronger. The more people were in the field, the stronger the buffs got. Zephyr took on a strange stance that Sahak had never seen before. In an instant, Sahak was in front of Zephyr, using Accelerate and trading blows. Sahak tried to use a move called Trust, but Zephyr dodged it and only managed to scratch Sahak's forehead. As Sahak rolled away, he attempted to kick Zephyr, but it turned out he had kicked a steel pipe, losing control of the fight. Zephyr then bombarded him with punches, and even with the Redfield buffs, Sahak couldn't do much. He lost his sword, and as Zephyr fought him, he failed to notice attacks coming from other directions and had to take them head on. A bulky man with a steel ball joined the fight, asking Zephyr to play with him. Zephyr mocked him, calling him a pet, and as he threw the steel ball, Zephyr easily dodged it. Zephyr continued to deflect the attacks and move swiftly, but over time everyone else in the Redfield grew stronger while Zephyr tired out. The bulky guy managed to tie up Zephyr's hands with a chain, creating an opening for Sahak to attack Zephyr's back. Sahak claimed it was over and told Zephyr to beg for his life. He dashed toward Zephyr with the buffs from the Redfield and Accelerate, but didn't finish him off. Instead, Sahak played with Zephyr, slowly hurting him, boasting that his abilities were now 80% stronger. But what Sahak didn't know was that Zephyr watched his every move. With his hands tied, Zephyr stomped Sahak, slamming him into the ground. Zephyr grabbed Sahak's hair, lifted him, and struck him again. Zephyr criticized their teamwork, and Sahak flew around like a fly, preventing the bulky guy from landing an attack. Zephyr turned to face the bulky guy again, Asking why he stayed so far away with his imposing build, Zephyr used his aura to draw the man closer and simultaneously attacked the other members with the steel ball. In the end, all the heresy examiners were defeated. Sahak asked Zephyr if he was a god worshipper. Zephyr brushed off the question, saying Sahak didn't deserve an answer. Meanwhile, a man with red hair watched the fight from the temple and was surprised to see Zephyr. He believed Zephyr had been by his master. After the fight, Zephyr walked to an empty area and suddenly broke down in pain due to a side effect of mana freezing when his mana was depleted. Then something appeared in the sky, indicating that the collection was about to begin. Zephyr faced the spirit of Shylock and mentioned the authority of the god of Lone, Usra. He confirmed that Zephyr's mana had fallen to 0, and the skill Wall of Iron Will began its collection. It turns out the passive skill Wall of Iron isn't just a skill that makes you tougher, it also makes you more tired and hurt. When your mana reaches 0, all that tiredness and hurt comes back like a loan you have to pay. Some adventurers used it to fight tough dungeons and ended up in big trouble. Usra, the god of loans, loved when things went bad for humans. Shylock was checking how much damage Zephyr took. He did some math and summoned a big bell to smash Zephyr, but Zephyr was ready. He had an emergency potion hidden just as the bell was about to crush him. He chugged the potion. Shylock checked Zephyr's mana, canceled the debt collection, and vanished. Zephyr laughed at Usra, saying he was underestimated. He bragged that he was a pro who survived even when humans were gone. He even flipped Usra off before passing out. Usra was furious, realizing Zephyr had played him. The next thing Zephyr knew, he was tied to a bed, and a priestess was there. He owed her for some potions he bought before the dungeon. They were overdue. The priestess was mad because Zephyr kept doing dangerous things. She decided to take Zephyr's organ as collateral. Zephyr struggled to remember her name as her men prepared to cut his arm off. Finally, he remembered and called her by her other persona, White Rose. The priestess was surprised that Zephyr knew her other identity. She asked who he was, and Zephyr smiled, telling her men to leave. He explained that she was Anna Primrose, a sister of the Shrine of Light, and also known as White Rose, with connections to the underworld and trades in monster stuff and info. Zephyr needed gear to clear a tough dungeon, so he asked the priestess to talk. He was happy she picked him up and asked her to untie him. Meanwhile, Sahak woke up furious, tossing things around and scaring the nurse. He was mad at Zephyr for saying he didn't have the right to know him, and vowed to kill him. Ned, his superior, came to check on Sahak. He told Sahak to lie down and sent the healers away. Ned had heard about what happened to Sahak. Sahak tried to apologize, but Ned silenced him by putting a knife in his mouth. He said everyone had been talking about the incident all night long. Ned seethes with anger, his face twisted into a scowl. Sahak's humiliating defeat in front of all those slaves burns like a fire in his chest. To make matters worse, Ned points out that in the last 2 years, Sahak has only managed to find 2 demon god worshippers. Sahak kneels before Ned, trembling with desperation. He begs for one more chance, swearing he'll do anything to redeem himself. Ned's eyes narrow as he listens. He tells Sahak that he can't let those who've brought shame upon them live. He promises to decide Sahak's fate after he eliminates their enemies. With a mysterious package in hand, Ned hands it to Sahak. It's a demon god worshipper starter pack, supposedly found in the room of the enemy worshipper. Ned explains that Sahak can't choose how he completes his tasks. In the end, the once feared Mad Dog Sahak, the enemy of all hunters, reluctantly agrees to become a demon god worshipper. He's ecstatic about the chance for redemption and declares that Zephyr will be the one to die, not him. Little do they know, Ned is a disciple of a demon god worshipper official. He's aware that Zephyr uses his school's martial art techniques, known only to his master and the 4 brothers. Ned plans to use Zephyr to eliminate Sahak. If Zephyr doesn't cooperate, Ned is prepared to dispose of him himself. Back in White Rose's house, Zephyr reveals a preserved predator's corpse he kept in his silver room. They agree that Zephyr will provide another predator's corpse, and Rose will purchase items for him. But before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Not Primey, who commented, "Creation Magic OFC" on our Genius Mage video. Thanks for commenting. After concluding their business with White Rose, Zephyr rejoins his party for a meal. As the atmosphere grows awkward, Zephyr claims he won't drink horse piss and produces an expensive, rare drink he noticed in Rose's dungeon. He asks her to give it to him. With this, they start getting to know each other. Zephyr believes they will achieve results together and help him deal with the monsters in the area, whether he likes it or not. Having been on the same team as Goat in his past life, Zephyr knows how to handle him. He just needs a good teacher. However, he also recognizes the importance of working with the other party members. Dale, the blonde member, harbors suspicions about Zephyr and believes that the truth will come out in due time. He views Zephyr as a potential scammer who won't last long. Their next destination is a dungeon located in the cave town of Edeline, a town built hundreds of years ago within the mountains. It's filled with spider webs. Zephyr uses his mana detection to sense the surroundings. He extends his senses through the ground, detecting shapes, sudden movements, and objects imbued with magical power. Before they enter, Zephyr briefs them. He explains that inside the dungeon, they will encounter a black steel spider. Zephyr is confident, but Dale isn't convinced. The black steel spider is a formidable foe with high offensive and defensive stats. They multiply quickly, making a nest of them even more challenging to handle than a grown predator. Zephyr assures Dale that he doesn't need to enter if he doesn't feel confident in him. Entering the dungeon, Dale felt a mix of excitement and unease. Zephyr had mentioned that he could handle it on his own, but Dale couldn't help wondering if it was as perilous as Zephyr had described. As he carefully moved forward, Dale made an unfortunate mistake by accidentally touching a sticky spider web. Immediately, a nearby spider was alerted, and it lunged at him. Before Dale could react, Zephyr swiftly pulled him out of harm's way and took on the spider mob himself. Thanks to Zephyr's unique abilities, the spider's fangs couldn't penetrate his skin. Zephyr signaled for the rest of the group to gather around him to deal with the spiders. Even though these were just small spiders, their webs were tough to handle, and they could root you in place if you weren't careful. Zephyr, ever the strategist, instructed them to cover their weapons with cloth to easily shake off the spider webs, and it worked like a charm. With a burst of mana, Zephyr obliterated the attacking spiders, making it look effortless. Zephyr thought to himself that situations like these were nothing new to him. Even in his past life, he had often trained soldiers who struggled to follow his instructions. So when Dale messed up and had to deal with the problem on his own, Zephyr didn't see it as a big issue. He believed it was better for Dale to learn through experience rather than having everything explained to him. The next challenge they faced was the larger spiders. Zephyr had advised them to target the softer flesh near the stomach, and they followed his advice. While Agro acted as the tank, Dale and Goat focused on attacking the spider's vulnerable spots. In the end, the three original party members managed to defeat the spider, and Zephyr commended them, saying it wasn't bad for their first time dealing with such creatures. As they continued deeper into the dungeon, Zephyr effortlessly dispatched hordes of spiders, while Dale, Goat, and Agro struggled to take down even one. Zephyr decided it was time for a break and told them to regroup and eat, as the dungeon's boss was the next challenge on their list. Curiosity got the better of Goat, who asked Zephyr about his past. Was he part of a large guild or an apprentice of someone famous? Dale found himself intrigued by the question as well. Instead of revealing too much, Zephyr simply stated that he had been an explorer in his past life. Goat tried rephrasing the question, but Zephyr reminded them that he had indeed been an apprentice of someone great in his previous life. But he doesn't tell them that. Instead, he asks them to finish quickly and break the spider legs to use as a weapon. He then tells them to go out as he will finish on his own, which they refuse to do. They say that since they had gone in that far, they want to stay and finish it together. And Zephyr explains that they are not going to do nothing as he gives each of them a role. Zephyr goes inside the Spider Queen's nest. The breeding room for the queen has a special night spiders, whose sole duty is to protect their queen. From the silver room, Zephyr takes out a bunch of bags of ordinary flour. He then throws it towards the queen's guard. In an instant, Zephyr takes out a crossbow, shooting an arrow towards the spider. The flame bursts within the thick flour, will ignite the flour particles, causing a chain reaction. That is the principle of a spell called a dust explosion. Of course, the spiders aren't that weak enough to die from something like that, and they start chasing Zephyr. So he runs while shooting poison arrows at it, making it scream in pain. Before Zephyr goes, he shows a pouch he takes from the spider where black spiders produce their web. He explains to them how to use it, laying traps with the webs where he tells them to, and stay on guard while they are waiting for him. The inside of the queen's room is going to be filled with many more spider webs than the outside, so they won't have a chance if they fight inside. So they need to lure the queen out, as a spider knight trapped within the web that the party laid. Zephyr takes out the spider leg that he broke before, and starts attacking the spider knight. Then, what comes after is the queen itself, the enormous spider chasing Zephyr as it wants to gobble him up whole. As he sprints toward the cave's entrance, the queen spews venom in his direction. Luckily, he narrowly leaps out of the cave with the queen hot on his heels. With urgency, he instructs everyone to start attacking. Armed with spider legs in both hands, Zephyr joins the fray, determined to take on the boss head-on. The rest of the party members focus on dealing damage. Gaut shares a crucial tip, explaining that the queen's outer shell is tough, but its insides are vulnerable nerves. Armed with a knife, he stabs the queen's leg and hammers it to obliterate its inner part. Meanwhile, Dale coats his blade with the poison Zephyr provided, his excitement overshadowing the danger as he fails to notice the queen's venomous stinger approaching him. Fortunately, Zephyr delivers a powerful blow to the queen's head, causing it to miss its attack. Zephyr skillfully deflects every attack aimed at him, while the other party members struggle to keep up. It's just as Zephyr had explained earlier. The queen spider tends to remain in the spot where it initially lands, often staying in its breeding room to lay eggs. This habit limits the movement of its hind legs, making the space behind them a relatively safe zone. Most of its attacks are directed at targets in front. As the poison spreads through its body, the queen goes into a frenzy. Zephyr seizes the opportunity and dashes forward, reaching the poison gland in its neck. He yanks it out and secures it with his belt, rendering the queen unable to use its poison for about 5 minutes. With the poison temporarily neutralized, Zephyr climbs up the queen's arm and leaps onto its head, delivering a shocking blow. In the end, they succeed in defeating the Spider Queen. Dale is the only one who notices that Zephyr let them have the victory, and he now realizes just how strong Zephyr truly is. As they gaze at the queen's lifeless body, Zephyr can't shake the feeling that he can't erase the Spider Queen's presence. So he decides to take the corpse of the larger spiders to offer to Rose. Then, out of nowhere, Dale rolled out a plush carpet right in front of Zephyr, gesturing for him to take a break. He looked at Zephyr with a warm smile, asking if he'd like to rest and let Dale take care of the rest. Now, as Zephyr thought about it, having the three of them together didn't seem so bad. With Dale's help, he could conserve his energy for dealing with the spiders and save his powers for the future challenges. However, he couldn't count on them for what lay ahead. Meanwhile, back at the temple, Rose was handling a rather unusual transaction. She was negotiating with a buyer who wanted to purchase the corpse of the predator. It was quite surprising to witness such shady dealings happening inside a temple in broad daylight. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.